It is autumn of 1475, at the Château de Loches in Francis Lawyer Valley, and a man is being lowered through a hole in a stone floor. He cannot see the bottom, his hands are bound, and the only thing tethering him to the world above is a rough rope held by guards he cannot see, only hear. When his feet finally touch stone, it is sloped, wet, and smells of something he cannot yet name. The rope is pulled back up, the hatch above him swings shut. An iron latch drops into place with a sound louder than anything he has heard in his life. He is now inside an oubliette, a medieval pit cell built for exactly one purpose. Not to imprison him, not to torture him, not even to execute him. To make him disappear entirely, without trial, without a body for his family to bury, and without a name left in any record. The word oubliette comes from the French verb oublier, to forget, and that is not a poetic name, it is a literal architectural instruction. These cells have no door, no staircase, no corridor. The only way in is a small opening at the top that French builders called the oculus, the eye, often only about 1 meter across, sealed with an iron grate bolted from above. Many of these pits, including the ones at Loches, were built as bottle dungeons, wider at the base than at the top, with walls that curved inward as they rose, so a prisoner had nothing to grip and no way to climb. They typically measured 2 to 3 meters across at the bottom and anywhere from 4 to 10 meters deep, cut into the masonry at the base of a tower and partly sunk into the earth itself. The floor was often built as a shallow cone, sloping toward a low central point, so a man could not even lie flat without sliding toward the center, the exact spot where, over the following weeks, his own waste would collect. His eyes take several minutes to adjust to the dark. Slowly the cell reveals itself in pieces, the curve of the wall, the slope beneath his feet, a dark stain at the center of the floor that is clearly far older than he is. The smell arrives next, not sharp but settled deep into the stone, built up over years, perhaps generations, from every prisoner who came before him. He tries to stand fully upright and cannot. The shaft is narrow enough that his shoulders brush the walls when he turns. He reaches up, his fingers touch nothing, he claws at the masonry anyway, and his nails come away bloodied. For the first 3 days, nothing happens, no food, no water, no voice from above. His body responds almost immediately. Within 12 hours his throat is dry, within 24 the dizziness sets in, and by the 72nd hour a headache arrives that will not leave. His body begins burning through its own stored glucose, then its own fat reserves, and eventually its own muscle tissue. Then, on the 4th day, something drops through the opening, a piece of dark bread in a wooden bowl holding barely a mouthful of water. This is the cruelest version of the oubliette, the drip feed. The Lord above does not want him dead quickly, he wants him kept alive, conscious and utterly silent for as long as it serves a purpose, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. Without any sunlight, his body stops producing vitamin D within days. His immune system weakens, wounds stop healing, his teeth loosen, his gums begin to bleed, his hands start to shake, and his mind starts to slip. Above him, life continues on its normal schedule. A baker's bell at dawn, servants carrying firewood at noon, the chapel bell ringing at dusk. He counts the bells at first, he stops counting around day 10. The only light he receives comes through the oculus, and it behaves nothing like ordinary daylight. At midday, when the sun sits directly overhead, a blinding chef cuts through the iron grate for a few minutes, and he learns to wait for it the way another man waits for a meal. The rest of the day it is simply a gray eye above him, and at night a wooden cover slides across it, plunging the cell into a blackness so total he cannot see his own hand pressed against his face. After enough nights of this, his vision begins inventing things, faint shapes, movement at the edge of sight that dissolves the moment he turns toward it. Medieval chroniclers described this as visions of saints, angels, and devils. Modern medicine simply calls it sensory deprivation hallucination, a brain denied any input that begins manufacturing its own. By roughly the 3rd week of total isolation, he starts hearing voices that sound like his wife, his children, voices calling him by a name no one in the world above has spoken aloud in months. He begins answering them. Meanwhile his body is under attack from every direction at once. There is no sanitation whatsoever in an oubliette. He relieves himself where he stands, and it runs down the sloped floor to the low point at the center, joining the stain left by everyone who came before him. In some of these conical pits, waste pooled ankle deep within weeks. That pool draws rats up through drainage gaps in the foundation, squeezing through cracks no human could fit through, feeding on scraps of bread and, eventually, on him while he sleeps. Old straw thrown down by the jailer carries lice and fleas that have lived in it for years. Within about 2 weeks his skin is covered in bites that will not close, because the air itself is thick with ammonia and rotten, starved of oxygen. Any small wound turns septic within days, faster than his body can fight it back. Some oubliettes in late medieval France and early Renaissance Italy carried a second mechanism entirely, a small iron sluice gate built into the base of the wall, connected by a stone channel to the castle moat or a diverted stream, operated from a simple handle above. Open the gate, and cold, foul water begins flooding the cell, rising past his ankles, his shins, his knees. It does not stop until someone above decides to close it. The sloped floor means he cannot sit without going underwater, so he stands, for hours, until his legs cramp and shake and finally give out beneath him. Some lords cycled the water, filling and draining the cell repeatedly, so the prisoner survived each round but lost a measure of strength every time. The brilliance of the device, from the lord's perspective, was that he never had to enter the cell, never had to lift a blade, never had to be present for a death. He simply turned a handle. It is no accident that this is happening at Loches in 1475. The castle belonged to the King of France, and that king was Louis XI, whose entire method of rule depended on quietly disappearing political enemies rather than publicly executing them. His most famous prisoner at Loches was Cardinal Jean Balieu, his own former chief minister, arrested in 1469 after secret letters to Charles the Bold of Burgundy were intercepted. Louis never tried him. Instead, he locked him in an iron cage so small Balieu could neither stand nor properly sit, cages the king's court nicknamed the Daughters of the King. Balieu spent 11 years inside before Pope Sixtus IV personally intervened to secure his release in 1480. The oubliette beneath these cages was the cheaper option, used when the king had no need to keep a prisoner alive for political leverage, only a need to make him vanish. A public execution creates a martyr. A man who simply disappears becomes nothing at all. Because no one is certain what happened, no family receives a body to mourn, and eventually even his name stops being spoken. It is worth being honest here. Most oubliettes shown to tourists in European castles today aren't real ones. Warwick Castle in England is the textbook case. A shaft long marketed as a medieval prison pit that modern archaeology has re-examined and found to be, almost certainly, a latrine shaft, lacking any chain rings, food hatches, or other features that would mark it as a holding cell. Much of the popular image of medieval Europe as one continuous dungeon actually comes from 19th century Romantic writers like Walter Scott and Victor Hugo, who took a handful of genuine horrors and painted the entire Middle Ages with them. But the real ones did exist, and Loches is one of the documented cases. Its dungeon levels, preserved bottle dungeon architecture, and the iron cages are all recorded directly by Louis XI's own chronicler, Philippe de Comines. What actually killed men in cells like this was never one single cause but for working together. Physical collapse from a body that could never stretch or lie flat. Infection from rat bites and septic wounds in an airless, bacteria-soaked chamber, which killed most prisoners long before thirst ever could. Slow starvation, whether sudden without rations or drawn out over months on a drip feed. And finally the mind itself, unraveling under total sensory deprivation and absolute silence. Our prisoner at Loches did not survive. When the hatch was eventually reopened, months or possibly years later, what came out was barely recognizable as the man who had been lowered down in the first place. And that, in the end, was always the entire point, not his death, but the fact that his name was never written again.